Hi, this is the first video in a series of videos from the Vermont Developmental Disabilities Council. This video covers the introduction for the work plans for the Council's performance years 1 and 2 in our next 5-year cycle. That cycle begins October 1st of 2021 and goes all the way out to the end of September in 2026. I'm Kirsten Murphy, and I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont Developmental Disabilities Council. I'm going to start by sharing my slides, and for those of you that are following, we're going to be going over the first 9 slides of the slide deck. All right. So, short introduction. The work plans are really monster documents, if you will. They're very detailed, and that is deliberately so. That's what's required of us when we file our work plans with our federal partners. So for that reason, we've created videos in order to make the plans more digestible. You'll see that this video series is broken into 6 segments. This introduction will describe how the work plans are structured, how the slide presentation is structured, and how the council sorted through all of its 14 objectives. And finally, we'll close with some description of what makes a good work plan. The next 4 videos cover each of our broad goal areas, and each goal area has a different number of objectives assigned to it. You can think of objectives as sort of mini goals that support a bigger, broader goal. So video 2 has 5 objectives, all that support the idea of empowering Vermont citizens with developmental disabilities and their family members. Video 3 describes 3 gaps in service using 3 objectives. Video 4 has just 2 objectives, and those are focused on addressing the needs of an under or unserved group. In this case, the council has chosen to focus on the needs of people with complex disabilities and or substantial support needs. And finally, video 5 talks about our systems change work, and it has 4 objectives. Those 4 videos can be watched in any order you choose. They're of varying length, but range between 20 and 30 minutes each. Finally, the last video is a short conclusion, just 9 minutes, where we return to the questions of what makes a good work plan and review some of the ways in which we think that this is a strong work plan. Finally, I want to say that work plans are works in progress. We are expected to need to change the work plan over time. So you should think of this as our best guess. It's what we will file with our federal partners in at the end of September of 2021. They will approve it, but with the expectation that if and when we make changes, we describe those changes in our annual report to the federal partner and explain why that change was necessary. All right, so who is this federal partner? They're the Administration for Community Living, or ACL. ACL is a division in the United States Agency of Health and Human Services. So Health and Human Services is a huge agency. It has many different departments or divisions. The Center for Disease Control, the Institute of Health. One of those divisions is the Administration for Community Living, and this is where the federal government provides assistance to states in order to ensure the best possible outcomes for people who have disabilities, brain injury, physical disabilities, developmental disabilities, or who are simply older Americans. And it ensures that they have the best community-based experience possible. So living in the community, not in institutions. And the federal government is seeking to support states to promote meaningful life in the community. Now, when our partner ACL thinks about the work of DD councils, it thinks about it as a kind of formula. And so that's why we've structured the work plans the way that we have. In the formula, the federal government thinks of us combining our resources, which are inputs plus certain activities are going to result in outputs and outcomes. Now I'm going to define those terms. Inputs are all of the council resources. You probably think of money immediately. Our budget is about $500,000 a year, which we receive from Congress. But it's also things like staff time and even the connections that the council has built in the community with partner organizations and the influence that it's established with state leaders. Those are all types of inputs. Activities are the things the council does. So that's either something the staff undertakes or something that staff contract or write a grant agreement with a community partner and have that organization oversee. Outputs are concrete things. They're sometimes called deliverables. And these are things like a white paper or a new law. It could be 25 people that are now trained in a certain approach or idea. It could be a new chapter of a self-advocacy organization. These are things that we can point to in the world, and those are called outputs. Outcomes are very similar, but not quite the same. Outcomes are changes in the world around us. So, for example, if the council were to invest its resources and add activities that promote alternatives to guardianship, an output might be a new set of rules about supported decision making, which is a type of alternative to guardianship. An outcome would be a change in the world. For example, more Vermont transition age youth enter into supported decision-making agreements. That would be an outcome. So now I'm going to show you a template that we use throughout this presentation for each of the 14 objectives. At the top, you will see the objective, its number and name, and then we will write out the text of the objective. So that's either a sentence or two. Objectives are still pretty broad and aspirational, meaning they are what we hope to see happen. What puts meat on the bones of an objective is this area here in the left-hand column. And that's going to be a list of activities that we expect and think likely that we will undertake in the first 2 years of our 5-year work plan. So remember that activities plus our resources, inputs, result in outcomes, changes in the world around us. And all of our objectives have more than one work stream, more than one set of objectives, so there are more than one outcomes. Finally, on the last slide, remember there's another result, and those are outputs or things that are created, and that is listed on a very similar slide with the objective at the top and then a list of outputs. You'll see that template repeated for each of the 14 objectives. Now I turn to how it is that we helped our council members on the program committee to sort through the 14 objectives, because coming up with activities for all 14 would have been an enormous job and honestly probably not necessary. We placed each of the objectives into one of 3 categories. Projects where most of the activities are already underway, or objectives where most of the activities are underway. Objectives where we are going to be undertaking new activities. This is the heart of what we asked members to focus on and brainstorm what those activities would be. And then just 3 objectives, which are so new to the council that the majority of the activity in the first 2 years is largely going to be focused on studying and building relationships and getting ready to move into new activities. Notice that this makes the work plan much more manageable because undertaking 14 brand new objectives all at once would not be feasible for a small council, which we are considered a small council. We have, we're one of, I think, 8 or 10 councils in the country that are called minimum contribution councils, meaning we receive the least funding because we come from states with the smallest populations in the country. So for those of you that like to follow color coding, it's not terribly important, so don't worry about it if you find it confusing. But projects that are underway are coded purple. Projects that are brand new are pink. And then where we're studying things, you'll see those colored in yellow. Again, I want to make it clear that no objective fits cleanly into one category. For example, raising awareness would be a good one to think about. When we are raising awareness, we are undertaking certain new activities. There is, in fact, a little bit of some activities that are carried over from our previous 5-year cycle. So you'll see it's the majority of the activities are pink, and that's why it's placed in this category. But there's also a work thread that is colored purple because it is something already underway. Similarly, with universal design, most of what we need to do is get ready to undertake projects by becoming more connected to the community working on this and understanding the various options and principles for universal design. However, there is one work stream having to do with vaccination work for COVID-19 that is already underway, and that project falls under universal design, but it's already underway, so it's of course color coded differently. So that's just a general idea if you care to follow things in that level of detail. If you don't, that's fine. Just focus on what are the activities and do these make sense to me as somebody thinking about how the council is using its resources. There are some other classifications or terms that the Administration for Community Living uses when it thinks about work plans. Now, again, if this feels confusing, just set it aside. But for those who care, I wanted to make you aware of it. One of the things ACL likes to know is that any particular, and when undergoing any particular activity, what area of emphasis is the council working on? And the ACL names 8 areas of emphasis. You can think of this as the entire universe of possible areas where systems provide supports and services: employment, housing, transportation, recreation, health and healthcare, quality assurance, education, and the education of very young children called early intervention, and then finally, formal and informal supports, which refers to the supports that allow someone to live in the community, whether those are paid, meaning formal, or unpaid, meaning natural or informal supports. Friends, neighbors, those are considered informal supports. The other thing ACL likes to ask us about is what strategies is the council using to accomplish its activities? So they name 11 strategies, with one of them being this other category. And these are things like outreach to new communities that haven't been involved in a particular project before. It could be technical assistance, where the council is supporting another organization to undergo some sort of project. And we have some special expertise in how to manage projects, so we offer technical assistance. It could be that we're educating the general public, and the public awareness campaigns would be an example of supporting and educating communities. We might be collaborating with other agencies or with other councils, committees, and programs. We might be eliminating a barrier to services or supports. We could be wholly designing or redesigning a system, participating in that. We might be building a coalition or supporting citizens, especially citizens with developmental disabilities and their families, to speak out and to participate in the democratic process. We might be informing our policymakers, either in the legislature or at government agencies, about a particular issue that's important to the disability community. Or we might be demonstrating a whole new approach to services and supports, in which case, where we demonstrate something, we generally take it on for a short while, show its value, and then find another organization that's willing to scale up that particular approach. So those are all different types of strategies that we employ. And the reason I point those out has to do with our final slide here, which is to say, what makes a good work plan? Well, one of the things that makes a good work plan is that a council is using as many of those 11 strategies as possible. Another issue for a good work plan is that it covers many areas of emphasis. We don't focus on just healthcare, for example. And generally, there's a balance between areas where, at least as a small council, we really dig in deep, and some where we think we can be impactful even with a little bit lighter touch. There should be activities in a good work plan that support 2 or more objectives, because we like to get the most bang for our buck. So if we're going to undertake an activity, we hope that it supports more than one of our objectives. That would be ideal for that to happen throughout the plan, so that the plan becomes a very complex, interwoven sort of set of projects. We have to meet certain DD Act requirements, and those are 4. 1, we must support self-advocacy. 2, we must support self-advocates to teach their peers. 3, we must work on meeting the needs of an underserved community. And 4, we must work in partnership with our DD Act partners, who are 2 organizations, the Center for Disability and Community Inclusion at the University of Vermont, and our legal branch under the DD Act, Disability Rights Vermont, and their partner, the Disability Law Project at Vermont Legal Aid. So the act that created councils, the DD Act, also created these 2 other organizations, and there is an expectation that we will undertake some projects in partnership with those other 2 entities. Finally, projects must also be undertaken in collaboration with other community partners, which is something we always do. The work plan must set realistic targets, meaning that we don't write in a work plan that we expect to, say, train 100 people when realistically we're probably going to train 25. We try to keep the numbers realistic, or even a little bit low, so that we're always exceeding those targets. And finally, the work plan has to make this very delicate balance between innovation, new projects, things that are completely out of the box, and sustaining some of our longer term investments. Because systems change work takes time. It often takes more than a 5-year cycle. So some projects that began in the last cycle, or even the cycle before that, are going to be sustained in this upcoming 5-year plan. At the same time, we want to find room to take on new challenges and to try innovative things to solve problems that have yet to be solved. So those are the questions about what makes a good work plan. And with that, we conclude this introductory video. I hope it was helpful to you. And as I say, you can watch any of the next 4 in the order that seems most to meet your interests. Thank you very much for your attention.